Monique and I have taken a lot of heat when we make statements like slavery has been around since the dawn of humanity. It is a sin problem. It is a sin like every other sin problem. There's nothing new under the sun. And people really take exception with those statements from us because it's like they want to put the American experience of whites enslaving Africans as being like in this little special bubble that, you know, there's no other slavery that's ever happened that is as horrific as what whites did to Africans. And it is horrible. And humans are wicked. Adam and Eve are our first parents, and we are capable of doing wicked, horrible things to each other. And yet God's justice, I think it's so interesting that his justice standards required that the laws treated the slaves and the servants with the same dignity as the free people. You couldn't just go around abusing slaves because they were slaves. God's justice standard acknowledges the sinfulness of man. So like, just as Jesus says to the Pharisees, he says, you know, Moses granted you a certificate of divorce because your hearts were hard. Your hearts were wicked. God says, look, your hearts are hard. You're going to enslave people, but we're not just going to be all willy-nilly about this. We're not going to let evil run rampant. We're going to have constraints on evil because these people are image bearers. So,
and one of the things I find fascinating is how Black people want to run to Islam as being some kind of a savior. When the fact of the matter is, Islam was more invested in slavery than Christianity was. So we had a lot of Black Africans who died on the Middle Passage going to America. There were more who died crossing the Sahara as slaves going to the Middle East. As a matter of fact, by some records, 1 and 2 slaves died on the way to the Middle East. So there is no slavery there. But not only that, Islam is still practicing slavery. There are still parts of Africa right now where Christians are taking the slaves. I know this for a fact because I have paid to free some of those slaves.
So when we think about from a New Testament perspective of how did this begin to be dealt with in the New Testament church? Because God lays out this radical new vision of drawing people from among the nations to create a new household, a new family. And so now all of a sudden you've got people in a local church conference context where you might have a Roman soldier who works for the government. You might have a Jewish tax collector. You might have someone who was from North Africa. You might have a rich person and a slave, because 2/3 of the Roman world were slaves. And so, and there they all are together, and God's making this new people. So what is the vision? Like, what would be some good scriptures we could point to from a New Testament context when it comes to the question of slavery?
Okay, so the church began at Pentecost, all right? So you read Acts 8, and it talks about who was present at Pentecost. And there were Jews from all over the world. There were Jews from the Middle East. There were Jews from Africa. They were all there. The first church, and we know that 3,000 joined the church that day, and there were 3,000 people Jews from all over the world, all color, every color under the skin. So the first church, the beginning of the church, the DNA of the church was multicultural. But not only that, let's look at this. The first non-Jewish convert was the Ethiopian eunuch. And God performed a miracle in order for Philip to reach out to the Ethiopian eunuch. That Ethiopian eunuch went back to his queen, Candace, shared the gospel. By 400 AD, pretty much all of Africa was Christianized. The idea that Christianity came to Africa by white missionaries is a total fabrication. Christianity, the heartbeat of Christianity was in Africa, and it went from Africa and spread to Europe. So that is the foundation. So the whole church was as diverse as it could possibly be. But we see that the church was very diverse, and we see passages that sort of actually deal with that as well. We have Paul in 1 Timothy 1, 9 and 10, and he's talking about, he put slave traders in the same category with murderers. Revelations 13:10 speaks against those who bring people into captivity. Another translation says men stealers. We have Philemon, where you have Paul tells Onesimus to go back, but he tells Philemon to accept him not as a slave, but as a fellow person of Christ, as he would accept Paul himself. But let me say something here to try to put things into perspective. One of the challenges we have is that whenever we think of slavery, we go to antebellum South. And we are looking at slavery from a perspective that didn't exist thousands of years ago. Slavery had always existed. Slavery was not seen as an institution that needed to be dealt with. That was how nations did. That's how nations got their labor. It was not even seen. It was an accepted institution by man. So now we're looking back on it and saying, man, slavery was so horrible. Yes, but we are judging it by a different standard than the standard that they were dealing with. So when we look at it now, we are dealing with it because Christianity has given us the idea that all men are created equal and all men are made in the image of God. But without that idea, you can't really make a case that slavery is wrong.
See, this is...
We just gonna sit here for a minute.
Because we gotta let that soak in.
Yeah, you need to rest on that.
I don't think people really have an appreciation for the assumption of the dignity of humanity, and that is a uniquely Judeo-Christian idea. You don't just run over into other nations where they are dominated by other religions and have a conversation about what we take for granted as the dignity of humanity. Right. And so to even have a conversation about slavery being wrong or immoral is to assume a critical aspect of our worldview. And you, absolutely. Mr. Atheist, may not affirm my worldview, but you are now borrowing from my worldview. So if you want to have a conversation about the indignity of slavery and how it oppresses humanity, cool, we can talk about that, but I just want to make you aware you're borrowing from my worldview. And we take it for granted. I don't think we often reflect how we just assume the dignity of humanity to begin to proceed to have a conversation about the evils of slavery. Slavery was just granted. Nobody was asking the question, should we be oppressing these people? Should we be capturing them? Nobody was asking that question.